What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. With more playtime on the new patch, I wanted to break down more in depth this new soldier rework and discuss the best ways about going about playing him, but also countering him, as understanding both sides of the coin will help you as the character or against him. And I say rework because it's important to note that soldier didn't get straight up buffed. His strengths got reorganized, and I think it's even debatable if it's a net buff or not. But either way, what's for sure is that soldier is now a much more sharp character, improving at some matchups but getting worse at others. So the heart of it comes down to him losing damage. The spots you really notice this change, going back down to 19 when it used to be 20, is up against bigger targets, especially at close range. Because in the old version, when your weapon would spread, well, the closer you are, the higher percentage of shots would hit anyway. So because of that, in spots where that spread wasn't missing, you would have preferred the previous version. So now with no spread, much more accurate shots, but weaker ones, his strength shifts to being stronger at hitting smaller targets. Things with higher health, like shields, tanks, rushdown characters, are better against him than they were before even. Characters like Doomfist, Wrecking Ball, even D.Va with her armor health, Winston and Reinhardt's barrier really start to make soldiers' damage look lacking, but the areas that he's buffed is up against squishy duels, many of which he just simply couldn't take before. In the previous version, soldier was a fairly unimpressive answer to Pharah because he couldn't deal damage quick enough to either burst down the Mercy or shoot Pharah through the pocket. This new version, however, is way better at pressuring down small hitboxes from range, even ones that are hard to hit like Mercy. In fact, Mercy flying through the air was always weak to getting shot by a hit scan anyway, but I think soldier might even be better than the best hit scans in the game at doing that due to how reliable it is and how often he can replicate that play, especially with Tac Visor, which we'll get into in a moment. But there's other matchups that he simply couldn't do before. A character like Ana, out in the distance, has such a slender hitbox that unless he got a good Helix rocket connection first, his old spread meant that he couldn't really shoot multiple shots at Ana, and with that, he would just pressure her and she'd probably run away and he'd not confirm the kill. The new version of soldier has so many reliable shots. Despite having weaker damage, with good aim, you will be able to target those characters and reliably whittle them down. But I want to stress that that's exactly what you have to be doing with this soldier. The way you have to adapt your playstyle from the previous version to the new version is making sure that you're actively looking for those battles. The new version of soldier plays much more akin to the likes of Ashe or even Widowmaker, where whenever possible, you want to be taking angles to pressure squishies, not shoot tanks and barriers. If you are, the flanks and off angles the enemy takes are going to overwhelm you. You really have to win that range DPS high ground battle, because the new soldier isn't very good at the attritional focus tanks down battle, which a character like Torbjorn right now, I think, is the best at, because Torb can fortify a position, lay down a turret to deter flankers, deal a big volume of damage to the front line, and if the enemy takes off angles, the turret helps you with that anyway. Soldier is less threatening in that regard, so if he's not actively playing for those positions himself by running up to the high ground and contesting that high ground, you're going to do a lot of feeding the enemy support's ult charge without gaining a big advantage. And this breakpoint, I want to stress, is just so important, and kind of goes for any character in the game really, but you always want to know if your team's damage can reach the break point where focusing barriers or tanks becomes effective. So one of the best examples for this, especially in soldier, but in any case really, is a character like Wrecking Ball or Reinhardt's big shield. If your team is actively focusing those targets with characters that don't have enough damage to punish through the support they're going to get from their team, that's one of the best ways that tanks with barriers can make space in the game. Because if you shoot a barrier that has 1,000 health and regenerates, and the enemy focus on shooting squishies that have 200-ish health and get a pick instead, well, the man advantage has way more value than the shield advantage. So this then plays into how you want to go about countering soldier. And it's in this area that I think a lot of players right now are higher on soldier than they probably should be, because I think he's easier to counter than before. Wrecking Ball, Doomfist, and Reaper possibly being the biggest threats to him, jumping on him too quickly and being able to burst him, especially with focus fire, faster than he can burst even with a Mercy pocket. So the easiest way to go about countering him is to toss brawly, high health stat characters at him into close range where he's now weaker. Not to mention firing a very pinpoint accurate weapon at close range is also harder. That's the reason why a lot of close range characters in Overwatch have very forgiving attacks where their big spreads are able to land more easily. Soldier's damage relies more on headshots now to be truly scary, and the closer you are up against fast movement, the harder it is to stay on the head, and the more you would have not actually minded the old spread, because it actually would have made some shots hit that may have missed under the new system if you're off just by a little pixel away from the hitbox. And for the last section of the video, I wanted to give you some rapid fire Soldier 76 tips. First of all, his new primary fire, although the recoil can be jarring, in order to get the full effect of the new Soldier, you'll want to be full auto shooting as much as you can, really only burst firing like you used to if you know you're about to miss or you are missing in order to preserve ammo. You don't want to waste shots, of course. And as far as aim style goes, headshots are important, but on faster or harder to hit moving targets, often aiming at the legs is quite an easy Overwatch tracking tip. Characters like Pharah, for example, that sway in the air are easier to hit on the legs. And seeing as Soldier can get full-on pickoffs at range with his primary fire, you don't really have a reason to hold on to Helix Rocket anymore. It will help you get burst damage kills as well, but I would say on its short 6-second cooldown, just fire it away whenever you see a target to just add to your overall pressure damage, build ult, and work the enemy's defenses down, as it's not as required as it used to be in order to get a pick. Use his sprint to flank and get off angles, upstairs, and spots on the map that make you an obnoxious threat, playing around the health packs of the map, but also your own healing station, which help you remain in greedy positions that other characters can't. But on the other hand, healing station actually works pretty well for playing with the team, especially when you have control of the map. If your tank line is on a good corner and is going to be brawling for some time, laying down the health station and running away for a better angle for you to avoid the brawl and getting focused, but giving them health is a great way to keep your front line controlling corners or the cart or whatever, and build you a ton of ult. With healing in the game going down, the relative strength of healing station from Soldier has gone up, so it is significant. Don't forget about it to either heal your tanks or protect diveable characters on your team like Zenyatta. And another tip, when you have your ultimate, you can immediately press your ult right after using healing station, and there's a animation cancel, one of the few left in the game really, where normally it takes you a moment to pull your weapon up after deploying healing station, but the ultimate animation immediately cancels it unless you begin firing with the ultimate right as the healing station hits the ground. So healing station first, then immediately ult, so that you can have that extra health as the entire enemy team begins to try to focus you immediately. And due to the nature of Soldier's ult like that, you'll want to try to pair it with support ults whenever possible, unless you know you're safe. And with that, you can sprint into the obnoxious positions that are really going to see it get the maximum value. If you have the extra damage resistance or health from the likes of Sound Barrier, Transcendence, or Nano Boost, combining all that together with really aggressive positioning can help you clean up a team fight. Remembering to target the biggest firepower threats first, which is no different than what we've already been talking about for the entire video. Squishy backliners typically have the best burst damage and abilities, so target them first and you'll be able to clean up the tanks easily through attrition. And my final tip is a major exception to the playstyle I'm prescribing here. If your tank line has enough firepower, that is where it will be effective to play for shield pressure. If you have a standard engagement style tank like a Reinhardt or a Winston, then you're not going to have the team damage to focus on the front line most of the time. Whereas if you have like Zarya Hog, no shields of your own, playing safely behind them because their damage is so high, you will be able to focus the front line effectively. But since a lot of players in ranked play Rein or Winston mirrors, since both of them have cleave damage anyway, there isn't as big of a gain to work down shields. Whereas when you have Zarya Hog or Diva Hog, your hooks and beam damage will be able to chew down the front line when they don't have protection. Last, to review his meta standing, I think it's very interesting what they did with Soldier, and a very healthy change. His ultimate does improve with having more ammo, but it requires teamwork to set it up to truly be effective. And I think it's the kind of thing, sort of like High Noon, where game sense and familiarity with it lowers its effect when people are ready for what it can do and where Soldier will play in order to set it up. I think early on there's been some uptick in popularity of Soldier, where I've been playing him when I do play DPS for quite a while, even when he was kind of average. And if you hadn't touched the character, assuming he was just bad compared to the other hit scans, and then you came back to him and you're like, oh wow, this is pretty good. But to me, I think the power level is either equal or slightly give and take from what it used to be. And so far as like true meta standing goes, his playstyle now sort of has to be pigeonholed closer to the way Ashe and Widow play already. And because of that, I think especially up against those characters, who can burst him down a lot quicker at range than he can anyone, he looks less impressive. Now, I will say, the new version of Soldier, when he's in position, has more power than the old one did, since he can fire continuously, increasing his playmaking when he's set up. My problem is that the lower brute force damage makes it feel like when you don't have that positioning, far more punishing to pressure into it, so keep that in mind. Luckily, because Soldier can sprint, there's a lot of ways for him to sneak on a flank into an off angle, then heal himself, so he is set up with the abilities to do this, to force his way into the map sometimes, but I think all it takes is for the enemy to mark him with a close range character to deny that from happening. And then when he's stuck in a more fair poke fight exchange, characters like Torb or Ashe, I just think are better at that. So it's because of that distinction that I want to say that you have to be careful for picking him at lower tiers of play, because a lot of that gameplay comes down to just two team comps standing on the low ground next to each other, both shooting each other's tanks. And because Soldier's bad at that, what you really should be doing is taking risks to push yourself into high ground angles or on flanks, off angles, which is going to require a bit of game knowledge, game sense to know those timings where that can work, as well as the skill in order to outplay whatever the enemy sends at you to contest you. But that's everything I got to discuss Soldier 76 and his new playstyle. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and if you found this video interesting or useful, please leave it with a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.